My name is Noah Reed, I'm 24 years old, and this is the story of how my own family left me to die, and how a quiet janitor I barely knew ended up proving I was worth more than they ever believed. I still remember the morning my father told me I was too expensive to save. I was 19, lying in a hospital bed at St. David's Medical Center in Austin, tubes running through my arms, for fluid dripping rhythmically beside me. My body was trembling from chemo, but nothing hurt as much as the words that came out of his mouth. He stood at the doorway of room 3B14, his suit wrinkled, his jaw tight. My mom was behind him, nervously wringing her hands like she was praying I'd disappear so she wouldn't have to face me. "Cancer treatment costs more than you're worth to this family, Noah," Dad said. His tone was calm, businesslike, like he was reviewing a repair estimate. "We're done here." It was 7:43 a.m. The untouched breakfast tray beside me still had cold scrambled eggs on it. My older brother, Ryan, stood by the window scrolling through his phone, detached, like this was just another errand he couldn't wait to finish. Dad held a manila folder thick with papers. He waved it slightly, the corners bending. 300,000 minimum, he said flatly. That's before complications. Before extra rounds. Before the experimental drugs that never work anyway. If this goes wrong, we lose everything, the house, the business, your mom's retirement, Ryan's real estate investment. For what? A 60% chance? Mom didn't look at me. Not once. The woman who used to check my fever with the back of her hand couldn't meet my eyes. "Mom," I croaked, my voice rasped and thin from chemo burns down my throat. "You're not really going to leave me here, are you?" She turned her face to the wall. "Your father's right. We have to think about the family's future." Ryan finally looked up, meeting my gaze with something between pity and annoyance. "It's just math, Noah. 1 life versus 3. Sometimes you gotta make hard choices." And then they left. Just like that. They changed their numbers that same day. Moved houses within a week. Even convinced my girlfriend, Madison, that staying with me would ruin her life too. Within 3 hours, I went from being a son, a brother, a boyfriend, to absolutely nothing. Before I tell you my complete story, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story travels. Last week, 5 years after that morning, a man in an Armani suit knocked on my apartment door. I thought it was a debt collector. "Noah Reed," he asked, smiling politely. "My name is Harrison Cole, from Cole & Associates downtown. I'm here regarding a $63 million inheritance." I laughed right in his face. "Yeah, sure. And I'm the Prince of Texas." But his expression didn't change. He opened his briefcase and pulled out several official-looking documents with gold seals and signatures. "The donor," he said carefully, "specifically requested that I deliver this message to you in person." That phrase, "specifically requested," hit me like a thunderclap. My breath caught. "Who?" He smiled faintly. "A man named Samuel Havers, a hospital janitor who once worked nights at St. David's during your treatment." My knees nearly buckled. Sam. The quiet old man who used to mop my floors around midnight. The one who'd sneak me packets of crackers when I couldn't afford dinner. He'd sit in the chair by my bed when the pain was unbearable and whisper, "Hang in there, kid. You're tougher than this disease." That man was worth $63 million? Harrison nodded gently, sensing my disbelief. "Mr. Havers requested that you receive his entire estate. He said you once reminded him why saving lives mattered." I didn't even realize I was crying until the tears hit the papers on the table. But to understand how a janitor ended up leaving me $63 million, you need to know what happened in those 5 years between being abandoned and being found. When I was 19, I had everything planned. I worked full-time as a construction apprentice under Rick Bennett, a no-nonsense foreman who believed in hard work and loud country music. I was saving for trade school. Weekends were for Madison, my girlfriend since high school. We'd drive down to Lake Travis, watch the sunset from my old Ford Ranger, and talk about our future. She wanted to be a nurse, I wanted to build our first home myself. Every Friday night, we'd have dinner at my parents' house, a small brick ranch on Maplewood Drive. Mom's pot roast, Dad's beer, Ryan's bragging about his latest real estate deal. I thought that was love. Stability. Family. Then the headaches started. Just small ones at first, pressure behind my eyes, like I'd stared at blueprints too long. I popped Advil, kept working. But it got worse. By April, I was collapsing at work. Rick drove me to the ER himself. The next day, a doctor with calm eyes and bad news stood at my bedside. "Noah," she said softly, "you have stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma." The word cancer echoed inside me like a gunshot. Mom gasped. Dad didn't. He just opened his calculator app. The first few weeks of chemo were hell, but I still believed we'd get through it. Mom brought muffins. Dad visited sometimes. Even Ryan texted. Madison came by with her nursing textbooks, explaining the treatments. Then the visit slowed. The call stopped. By week 5, only the nurses showed up. Then came that morning, the one where my father put my life on a scale and decided it wasn't worth the cost. They walked out of my room, leaving behind nothing but the sound of the heart monitor and the words that would scar my soul forever. You're too expensive to save. The first 24 hours after that, I wanted to die. Not because of the cancer, because of them. Because the people I loved most had turned my life into a math problem and decided I was the wrong answer. The nurses whispered about it in the hallway. They brought me juice boxes, extra blankets, small acts of mercy. But the pain wasn't physical anymore. It was the silence that followed. And then Beatrice Washington walked in, a hospital social worker with silver braids and eyes that could see straight through despair. She pulled up a chair, leaned in close, and said, "Honey, I heard what happened. Now you can lay here and let those cowards be right, or you can get up and prove that some things can't be priced in dollars." Those words became my lifeline. She opened a binder full of paperwork, programs, and hope. Charity grants. Payment plans. Remote jobs I could do from my hospital bed. They might have left, but you're not alone, she said. And that was the day I stopped being a victim and started becoming someone worth saving. Beatrice didn't let me wallow for long. She handed me a stack of forms and said, "You've got 2 options, Noah, give up or get creative." She wasn't gentle. She didn't coddle me. She pushed me. We filled out charity care applications, medical debt waivers, and requests for grants I didn't even know existed. She found me online jobs, things like data entry and medical transcription, that I could do from my hospital bed between chemo rounds. She said something I still remember word for word. Spite can keep you alive, but purpose will make you live. At first, my only purpose was surviving long enough to prove my father wrong. But then I found a bigger one, and it came in the form of a 7-year-old boy named Jamie. Jamie had leukemia. He was moved into the room next to mine. His parents lived 3 hours away in Waco and could only visit on weekends. I'd hear him laughing quietly to himself, trying to build Lego towers with shaking hands. One night, I dragged my 4-pole over to his doorway and said, "Need a construction consultant?" His face lit up. "You know how to build stuff?" I smiled weakly. "Used to. Before all this." From that night on, Jamie and I were teammates. We built Lego castles, towers out of medicine cups, even little cardboard race cars. Every time one of them collapsed, he'd laugh so hard the nurses would come running. That sound, that laugh, became my new medicine. Watching that kid fight with joy made me realize something. I wasn't fighting just to prove I was worth saving. I was fighting to show that every life is worth saving. By month 3, the chemo had ravaged me. I'd lost my hair, 20 pounds, and most of my energy. My hands shook constantly, but I still worked. I still typed. Beatrice said the hospital staff called me the stubborn carpenter. That's when I met Sam Havers, the night janitor. He was quiet, older, maybe late 60s, with kind eyes and a soft southern drawl. He mopped my floors every night like it was an art form. Never in a rush, always humming low gospel tunes under his breath. At first, I thought he was just doing his job. Then one night, I noticed he stayed longer than usual, even after he was done cleaning. He just sat there quietly while I worked on my laptop. When I looked up, he said, "Most folks sleep through their pain. You work through yours. That's rare." From then on, Sam became my midnight companion. He'd sneak me crackers from the vending machine, fix my laptop charger with tape, and sometimes, when he thought I was asleep, he'd whisper prayers for me under his breath. One night, when the pain was unbearable, I told him, "I think God forgot about me." He chuckled softly. "Nah, son. Sometimes he just sends people like me to remind you he didn't." I didn't know then how much that man would end up changing my life. Madison, my ex, called 3 months after my family left. I was shocked to hear her voice. "Noah," she said, "your dad came by. He told my parents I'd ruin my life if I stayed with you. That I'd spend my 20s drowning in your debt." I asked, "Do you still love me?" There was silence. Then she said, "Love doesn't pay bills." And just like that, click, another door closed. That night, I taped a note to my mirror. "You are worth saving." Every morning, no matter how sick I felt, I read it out loud. Sometimes through tears, sometimes through gritted teeth. But I said it. Because Beatrice believed in me. Because Jamie needed me. Because Sam cared enough to show up when everyone else walked away. The next few years were hell. I worked 3 jobs between treatments just to stay alive. After remission, I stocked shelves at a 24-hour grocery store, delivered newspapers at dawn, and did online tutoring in carpentry basics for high school kids. Every paycheck went straight to medical debt. I lived in a small apartment above a laundromat where the smell of detergent became my alarm clock and the sound of dryers my lullaby. But I kept going. Because I'd survived the unthinkable, being abandoned while dying. There was nothing left to fear. Then, 5 years later, almost to the day, came the knock. 3 sharp knocks. Professional. Confident. I opened the door to find a man in a flawless gray Armani suit, holding a leather briefcase that probably cost more than everything I owned. His silver hair gleamed under the hallway light. "Mr. Noah Reed?" he asked. "Yeah. Who's asking?" He smiled politely and handed me a card. "Harrison Cole, Cole and Associates. I'm here about a legal matter concerning an inheritance." I laughed. "Inheritance? You've got the wrong guy. My family's not exactly the type to leave me anything but trauma." He chuckled softly. "I understand your disbelief. But this is legitimate. May I come in?" Something in his voice made me step aside. He looked around my tiny apartment, the mattress on the floor, the ramen bowl in the sink, the cracked laptop on the card table. No judgment, just quiet observation. He opened his briefcase and began laying out documents one by one, pages with seals, signatures, and official stamps. "Noah," he said finally, "a donor has left you their entire estate. Valued at $63 million. My brain short-circuited. "I'm sorry, did you say 63 million? "Yes, sir." I felt dizzy. The room blurred. Who would do that? He reached into the briefcase again and pulled out a letter sealed with wax. "The donor specifically requested that you hear their final message before I reveal their name." That phrase, "specifically requested," echoed in my mind like thunder. I nodded silently. Harrison read from the letter, his voice steady. "The donor wanted you to know they never forgot the young man abandoned but never defeated. The one who worked through pain, who inspired hope in strangers, and who reminded a tired old janitor that some people are worth saving, no matter the cost." I froze. My breath caught. "Sam," I whispered. "It's Sam, isn't it?" Harrison's eyes softened. "Yes. Samuel Havers. The night janitor from St. David's." I sank to the floor, my hands shaking. He was rich?" "Extremely," Harrison said. "He held multiple patents for chemotherapy equipment. He lived simply, by choice, and he left his entire fortune to you. His only condition was that you use a portion to help others like yourself, abandoned medical patients." My heart broke open. Tears blurred my vision. Sam. The man who fixed my laptop with tape. The man who prayed for me when I thought I was worthless. He'd seen my worth before anyone else did, and he'd immortalized it in his final act of generosity. I looked down at the letter, at Sam's messy handwriting on the final page. "Tell Noah his father was wrong. He was never too expensive to save." And for the first time in 5 years, I cried, not from pain, but from being seen. It felt like the universe itself was rewriting my worth. I looked up at Harrison, who sat quietly across from me, giving me time to breathe. "There's more," he said gently. "Sam kept a journal. He mentioned you often." He reached into his briefcase again and handed me a small, worn notebook. The cover was frayed, edges yellowed from age. I hesitated before opening it, half afraid of what I'd find. The first page was dated June 4, 2019, around the time I started my second round of chemo. The handwriting was shaky but deliberate. "The boy in room 3B14 doesn't know I've been cleaning his floor for weeks. He says please and thank you every time. Most patients don't. Tonight, I heard him praying that his family would come back. They won't. But I will." My throat tightened. Page after page, Sam had written about me. About how I kept working from my hospital bed, how I comforted Jamie when he was scared, how I forced a smile even when I could barely lift my head. Then one entry hit me square in the chest. "His father came by today. Stood at the door for less than a minute. Didn't say a word." I wanted to knock him flat. How can a man walk away from a son like that? I may just adopt this kid in my heart. God knows he needs someone. I pressed the notebook to my chest, the pages trembling in my hands. Sam had been there, really there, during my darkest moments, even when I didn't know he was watching. "He never told me any of this," I whispered. Harrison nodded. "He didn't want recognition. He wanted you to find out when it would mean the most." I wiped my face and asked, "How did he even make that kind of money?" "He worked nights with a mop and bucket." Harrison smiled faintly. "Mr. Havers was a mechanical genius. He held 17 patents for medical device improvements, mainly in chemotherapy delivery systems. He could have retired decades ago, but he said the hospital needed him more than the world needed another millionaire." I felt a lump form in my throat. Sam, the man who wore the same gray uniform every night, had been quietly saving lives while mopping floors. "He left you a letter too," Harrison said, handing me a sealed envelope. I opened it carefully. Sam's handwriting filled the page. Noah, you once told me you didn't believe in miracles. I didn't either, until I met you. You reminded me that the smallest act of courage can change the course of a life. You made me believe again in people. When your father said you were too expensive to save, I decided that one day, the world would prove him wrong. It took me a lifetime to earn this money. You earned it by surviving. Don't waste it on revenge. Use it to remind others that worth can't be calculated. Sam. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I folded the letter back. Is it real? I asked. All of it? It's all real, Harrison said, his voice steady. The funds are already transferred into a holding account under your name. But Sam left one condition: you must create a foundation in his honor, for abandoned medical patients. I smiled through tears. Then that's exactly what I'll do. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat by the window, staring at the Austin skyline glowing faintly under the moon. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel small or forgotten. I felt chosen. By sunrise, I had made my decision. By noon, I was at the bank. When the teller read the account balance, $63 million, she actually stopped mid-sentence. Sir, I think there's been a mistake. There's no mistake, I said quietly. That's my second chance. The first call I made was to Beatrice Washington, the social worker who'd once saved me with a binder full of hope. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. Noah? Honey, how are you doing? B, I said, trying to steady my voice, are you sitting down? I am now, she laughed. Why? What's going on? Remember that janitor who used to sneak me crackers? Sam? Of course, I remember him. He left me $63 million. There was silence on the line for a long moment. Then I heard her inhale sharply. You're joking. I wish I was. But it's true. And I need your help. With what? I'm starting a foundation, for people like us. The ones who were abandoned, written off, left to fight alone. I want you to help me run it. Her voice cracked. Noah, that's beautiful. You have no idea how many people this could help. I do, I said quietly. Because I used to be one of them. Within weeks, the Havers Foundation was born. Harrison's firm handled the paperwork, but I was hands-on in every decision. The mission was simple: to ensure no patient would ever be abandoned because of money. We started by clearing $12 million in hospital debt for young adults who'd been cut off by their families. Then we expanded, paying for housing, medication, therapy, and even transportation for patients too weak to work. Every time we wrote a check, I'd think of Sam. Every time a patient cried with relief, I'd whisper, you were worth saving. Then one night, the past came knocking again, this time, through my phone. An unknown number lit up my screen. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Hello? There was a pause. Then a familiar voice said, Noah, it's Ryan. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Ryan? Yeah. Listen, before you hang up, please, just hear me out. I stayed silent. We saw the news, he continued. About the inheritance. About the foundation. Dad wants to talk to you. My chest tightened. After 5 years of silence, he suddenly remembers I exist? Noah, we made a mistake, okay? We were scared. It wasn't personal. Not personal? I snapped. You stood by while Dad called me a financial liability. You calculated my survival like a budget cut. That feels pretty damn personal. He sighed. We didn't know it'd turn out like this. You have to understand, Dad was under a lot of pressure. I laughed bitterly. Pressure? I had chemo running through my veins while you guys were signing mortgage papers. Ryan's voice softened. Mom's been crying every day since she saw the article. She wants to see you. We all do. We just want to fix things. Fix things? I repeated quietly. You can't fix what you threw away. Then, another voice cut in, deep, commanding, familiar. Noah, my father said. It's Dad. My blood went cold. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. Son, we were wrong. About everything. We thought we were protecting the family. We thought. You thought my life was too expensive, I interrupted. There was silence. Please, he said. Just meet us. We're still your family. I took a deep breath. No, Dad. Sam was my family. Beatrice is my family. The nurses, the kids in the cancer ward, they were my family. You're just blood. He tried one last time. Don't throw away your forgiveness, son. You've got more money than you can ever spend. I felt my voice go calm, steady, sharp. That's the difference between you and me, Dad. I don't measure worth in dollars anymore. And then I hung up. The line went dead, but the silence that followed was deafening. I stood there for a long time, phone still in my hand, feeling the same emptiness I'd felt 5 years ago, only this time, it didn't hurt. This time, I wasn't the broken kid begging to be loved. I was the man they'd written off, standing tall with proof that they were wrong. For the first time since that hospital bed, I felt peace. The next morning, I donated $3 million to St. David's Medical Center, the same hospital where my family left me to die. I asked that the pediatric cancer wing be renamed the Samuel Havers Pavilion. When the hospital director asked if I wanted a plaque with my name on it, I shook my head. Put Sam's name there. He deserves the credit. I didn't need recognition. The fact that the janitor who once mopped my floor now had an entire hospital wing named after him, that was the only closure I'd ever need. As the months passed, the Havers Foundation grew faster than I could have dreamed. Local news picked up the story first: cancer survivor turned millionaire helps abandoned patients. Then came the national outlets, CNN, NBC, even a feature on the Today Show. Suddenly, people across America were donating, volunteering, and sharing stories of their own abandonment and survival. One headline read, "The Janitor's Miracle, $63 million that changed lives." I framed that article. Not for the attention, but for Sam. Because that man deserved to be remembered as more than a janitor. He was an angel in work boots. Every month, I'd visit the hospital and sit quietly in the new Havers Pavilion, watching kids play board games or do arts and crafts with nurses. Sometimes, I'd bring pizza and watch them light up. And every time, I'd think of Jamie, the little boy who taught me how to laugh through pain. One day, Beatrice called me into her office. Her desk was covered in letters, hundreds of them. "These came for you," she said. "From patients your foundation helped." I picked one up at random. The handwriting was shaky, the paper tear-stained. "Dear Mr. Reed, I'm 17. My parents stopped visiting after my second surgery. Your foundation paid my bills and gave me therapy sessions. I just wanted to say, thank you for proving that I'm still worth something." I didn't even make it through the second paragraph before tears hit the paper. Beatrice smiled gently. "You're doing what Sam wanted, and more." I nodded. "Yeah. But you know what? I think Sam would have told me to forgive them." "Your family?" I looked out the window. "Yeah." She tilted her head. "Do you want to?" I thought about it for a long moment. "I don't know. But maybe they deserve to hear why I won't forget." A week later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting stopped me cold. It was my mother's. Inside was a letter, trembling and uneven. "Noah, I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know that I live with that day every single night. Your father convinced me it was the only way. I was weak. I was scared. And I was wrong. You were never too expensive to save, we were too small to see your worth. I watch you on the news and cry because I don't deserve to call you my son, but I am so proud that I still can. Mom." I sat at my desk, reading it over and over. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt sorry for her. Sorry that fear had stolen her courage. I folded the letter and placed it inside Sam's journal. Both belonged together, symbols of loss and redemption. Weeks later, I stood in front of a crowd at the hospital dedication ceremony. The governor, the mayor, dozens of reporters, all waiting to hear what the miracle survivor would say. I walked to the podium, holding Sam's janitor badge in my hand. 5 years ago, I began, I was a 19-year-old kid with cancer and no family. The people who were supposed to love me decided I was too expensive to save. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. But one man, a janitor named Sam Havers, decided otherwise. He sat by my bed when no one else would. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And when he passed away, he left me $63 million with one instruction: make sure no one else fights alone. I held up his badge, the light catching its faded metal. This badge belonged to a man the world overlooked. But he saved more lives than any doctor or millionaire I've ever met. And he taught me something my own father couldn't: that worth isn't earned. It's recognized. Applause filled the room, but I barely heard it. I was thinking about Sam, and the sound of his mop bucket rolling down the hospital hall at midnight. Later that evening, after the ceremony ended, I stood outside the hospital under the orange Austin sunset. I could almost hear Sam humming somewhere in the distance. A little boy ran past me, bald, wearing a Spider-Man hoodie, for pole trailing behind him. He stopped suddenly and waved. "Are you Mr. Reed?" I smiled. "Yeah, buddy. That's me. My nurse said you used to be sick, too." "I did," I said softly. "But I got better." He grinned. "I'm gonna get better too." I crouched down to his level. "I know you will. You're stronger than you think." He gave me a thumbs up and ran off toward the pavilion. I stayed there a while, just watching the light fade. The hospital windows glowed gold, like the building itself was alive, full of second chances. That night, I went home and opened Sam's journal again. The last page was blank. For years, I'd left it untouched. But now, it felt like it was waiting for me. I picked up a pen and wrote, "Sam, today, they named a hospital wing after you. You saved hundreds of lives without ever taking credit. I just hope I've made you proud. Also, Mom wrote me a letter. I'm not angry anymore. I guess forgiveness is its own kind of wealth. Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't come from blood, it comes from belief. Noah." When I finished, I closed the journal and placed it beside his badge on my nightstand. The weight of it all felt lighter now, like the story had finally come full circle. The world moves fast. Money fades, headlines disappear, but the foundation, the lives it saves, that's forever. And every time someone asks why I never reconciled with my father, I tell them the truth. He taught me what family isn't. Sam taught me what family is. It's been 3 years since the dedication of the Samuel Havers Pavilion. Sometimes, I still wake up expecting the hospital beeps, the sterile air, the weight of chemo on my chest. But instead, I wake up to the sound of laughter echoing from the pediatric wing below my foundation's office. I built my life on top of what almost destroyed me, and somehow, that feels right. The Havers Foundation has now cleared over $28 million in medical debt for abandoned patients. We've funded housing programs in 6 states, launched a scholarship for kids who survived cancer, and partnered with hospitals across the country. But my favorite part? Every Thanksgiving, we host a dinner at the pavilion, long tables, real food, music, laughter. And no one eats alone. That's Sam's rule. His only rule. A few months ago, a reporter asked me during an interview, if your father were standing here right now, what would you say to him? I didn't even have to think. I'd tell him that he was right about one thing, I said. Saving a life is expensive. It costs your pride, your patience, your comfort, sometimes even your peace. But it's worth it every single time. The reporter stared, silent. I smiled and added, because I know now, I wasn't too expensive to save. They were just too cheap to try. Every Friday, I still visit St. David's, not as a patient, but as a promise keeper. There's a bench outside the pavilion under a big oak tree. That's where I sit with Sam's old mop handle, polished and framed in glass, leaning beside me like a relic of something sacred. Kids come out to play, chasing bubbles with 4 poles and laughter. Nurses stop to chat. Sometimes, strangers recognize me and say, "Thank you for what you do." But they don't realize, I'm not the one who deserves thanks. Sam does. Beatrice does. Every nurse who smiled when they didn't have to. Every kid who kept laughing through chemo. They're the real miracle. A few weeks ago, a nurse handed me a letter that had been mailed to the hospital. The handwriting was old-fashioned and familiar. The return address stopped me cold, Ryan Reed, Dallas, Texas. For the first time in years, I hesitated before opening it. Then I tore it open. Noah, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I saw what you've built. I watched your interview, and I couldn't stop crying. Dad's gone now. Heart attack. His last words to me were, "Tell Noah he deserved better." I know that doesn't fix anything. But I thought you should know. Mom's living with me now. She talks about you every day. She keeps your photo on the mantle, the one from your high school graduation. I hope one day you'll forgive us. Ryan. I read it twice, then folded it carefully. I didn't feel anger, not even sadness, just peace. Maybe time really does sand down even the sharpest edges of pain. I placed Ryan's letter beside Mom's in Sam's journal. 3 letters, one from a janitor, one from a mother, one from a brother. Together, they told the whole story of my life, abandonment, survival, forgiveness. And somehow, it felt complete.